They feel like they're overwhelmed, they're adrift at sea, they're not really sure where to go. And if you don't know where to go, and you don't know how things work in the universe, it makes life seem hard. And yet life really isn't hard. It just seems that way because you don't know the rules of the game. So if you're a football player, and you go out in the field and you see people running around but you don't know the rules of the game, you're not going to really play it that well. How many of the young kids learning the game, they run for the touchdown at the wrong end and they get one for the other team? So that's sometimes what happens inadvertently, that what we're doing is a lack of understanding, and therefore it becomes complicated. It becomes overwhelming. And how many of you would you say sometimes are subject to what other people want and their whims and their demands on time, rather than being able to focus on your own? Anyone willing to just show of hands? Quite a few of you, probably about half of you, are actually not in charge of your time and your energy resources. So that's when I said, this really is kind of a how-to guide. And these insights are important because I realized what seemed so straightforward to me was not straightforward to our students, to our clients, to our friends, to our family. And I like to help. That's part of who I am and what my mission is, because I came back. And to share that empowers you to be maybe taking better charge of your life and finding it doesn't need to be complicated. It's almost like you have your DIY, your do-it-yourself kit, but you need the instructions to do a do-it-yourself kit. So is it true that you can all do this yourself? Absolutely. And you could eventually muddle through it, but if you had a little guidebook to help assemble your DIY kit, it goes a lot faster and a lot smoother. And the funny thing is that the blueprint for why we're here, on some level, is the same for all of us. This is what I learned in my near-death experience. The one thing, we're all here to help each other and love each other. But that comes through in very different ways, because we each have a very organized submission. And, as I already mentioned, that constructing a stable, full home instead of a rickety structure does require this whole team. And that's what allows the potential for the law of attraction to be unlocked, is knowing the rest of these pieces. And that's where it's important. The word law, a law is not negotiable. If you're speeding down the highway, whether or not you know what the speed limit is, eventually you're probably going to get a ticket. So there are laws about everything. And it's better to know them so that if you make a conscious choice to speed and get caught in a speed trap, that was your free will. But if you really don't know what the speed limit is, you don't know what the law is, it makes it hard to be following the rules and having things work best for you. So I would define law as a binding or enforceable rule. I also call it divine will, or the principles set forth by Creator, by God. And it's simply the way things work. Now, 9 is a complete number. It keeps replicating itself. So no matter what you add to it or multiply it by, the digits add up to 9. That's very unique. So if you were to take 9 times 3 equals 27, 2 plus 7 equals 9. 9 times 9 equals 81. 8 plus 1 equals 9. And so this actually shows us the perfect manifestation of God. 9 is a magic number, a complete number, and involves many things. In numerology, it is said, a sense of completeness, divine order. And again, numerologists would say, perfect movement of God. I think it's interesting that a circle is 360 degrees. 3 plus 6 plus 0 equals 9. There's 108 beads in a mala prayer bead set for the Buddhists. 1 plus 0 plus 8 equals 9. And in the Bible, 9 fruits of the Spirit and 9 gifts of the Spirit. So really the number 9 is not an accident at all. And that's what's very important to keep in mind, because there are some who would say there are more than 9 laws, or some that would say there are fewer than 9 laws. But every time I've tuned in, or when I observe things working in the universe, I realize that when someone states more than 9 laws, they're actually either replicating, in other words, the same law, or they're dealing with attributes or traits. Attributes or traits that help support laws. And that makes a distinctive difference. So we really can boil it down to the 9. So here's our 9 friends and rules. The law of divine oneness, the law of unconditional love. We'll explore each of them in detail in a few minutes. The law of cause and effect, the law of ideals, the law of attraction, the law of polarity, the law of abundance, the law of gratitude, and the law of grace. Now, the law of divine oneness, I really like what Sri Krishna says. Having pervaded this whole universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. Now, if Creator has actually imbued himself, herself, into the entire universe and still remains, that's something quite unique and magical. That's an aspect of oneness. But maybe an easier way of describing this would be visualize the earth. And imagine you're in outer space and all the oceans on the earth. They truly are one body of water. We have the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific. But with all those land pieces, the water is actually all one body of water. And because of the different areas of the zones and the magnetic forces, etc., there's characteristics and personalities of those. But it's really one body of water. And another way of thinking of this law of divine oneness is, have most of you seen Extreme Home Makeover, Home Edition? Okay. Some of you haven't, so I'll just say briefly, it's a television show that used to be on recently, where there was a family in need, that perhaps their house had been destroyed, or perhaps there was someone that had a new disability and their home no longer served them, and yet they didn't have the financial resources to do anything about it. So they would be nominated and selected, and a whole team of people would come in as volunteers. So there'd be professional architects and builders and designers, and they would come in and either build a whole new home or totally transform the home that they had to better serve them. And they would get into the personalities and desires of each occupant and help them make life easier. So what happens is there's usually a heartbreaking story in the beginning of how the family came to be in the situation. And then there's this team that desires to help them. And the project gets completed, and at the end of the project, there's half the town is there in support of what has just happened. And they have this big bus that's blocking the view for the family who has been taken out of town, sometimes out of the country, until it was done. And they say, move that bus. And you move the bus, and everyone starts crying, including me, Aaron. We're sitting there, oh my God, that's so beautiful. And it's that sense of unity of purpose and helping someone. So it's when you can have a deep connection and a feeling of caring, compassion, and love for someone or something or a cause outside of yourself. That's another example of divine oneness. Now, what's really important in this law is the concept of vibration or energy. That's bigger than we have time to get into today, but that frequency and that energetic match and that resonance is very key to understanding how the universe works. So divine oneness and the next law, they're the first ones in the book because it's very important to understand those two laws in quite a bit of depth. And some of them get approached early on and then picking up and going into more details. So building blocks can be very helpful.